My son charged me rent for the apartment I built, so I filed a $48,000 construction line. Narrator Paul Mercer, 64, carpenter in Montana. The day before my son was supposed to close on a cash-out refinance, a woman from the title company called him and said, "We cannot ensure clear title. There is a $48,000 construction line against the property." Eric put the call on speaker. "Who filed it?" he demanded. There was a pause while the woman checked the record. "Mercer Custom Carpentry," she said. "Claimant Paul Mercer." My son called me 11 seconds later. "Dad, what did you do?" I looked around the apartment above his garage, the apartment I had designed, framed, wired, insulated, trimmed, and paid for with 8 months of my life and $48,000 of my savings. "I sent you a bill," I said. "You chose not to pay it." 3 weeks earlier, his wife had stood in the kitchen I built and told me I owed them $1,600 a month. "This is our house," Dana said. "You're just a tenant." She was right about the house. What she had forgotten was the contract. My name is Paul Mercer. I am 64 years old, and I have been a carpenter since I was 17. I live in Copper Creek, Montana, a fictional little town where winter lasts longer than most grudges, and every second truck carries either lumber, hay, or a dog that thinks it owns the road. For 38 years, I ran Mercer Custom Carpentry. I built staircases that did not squeak, kitchen cabinets that closed properly, and porches strong enough to survive Montana snow. I was never the cheapest man in the county. I was the one people called after the cheapest man had finished. My wife, Joanne, kept the books until she died 4 years ago. An aneurysm took her on a Tuesday morning while we were discussing whether the dining room needed new curtains. For 6 months afterward, I left her handwriting on the shop calendar because erasing it felt too final. Our only son, Eric, helped me through that first year. He came every Sunday. He repaired the fence when I could not make myself care about it. His daughter, Lily, left drawings on my refrigerator. When I finally decided to sell the old house and reduce my workload, Eric suggested I move closer to him. He and Dana owned a 2-story house on 3 acres outside Copper Creek. The detached garage was oversized with a tall roof and an empty loft used for Christmas decorations and broken exercise equipment. "You could build an apartment up there," Eric said. "You'd have your own entrance and your own space. We'd be close without living on top of each other." I looked at the garage and saw the possibilities immediately. The footprint could hold a 720 square foot apartment, 1 bedroom, a small bathroom, a full kitchen, and windows facing the mountains. An exterior staircase would keep my comings and goings separate. I could help with Lily after school. Eric could help me if age ever made climbing a ladder a memory instead of a habit. Dana loved the idea at first. "It would raise the property value," she said. That sentence should have told me where her attention was. I heard only agreement. I offered to supply the labor if Eric and Dana paid for materials. Eric had just changed jobs and Dana wanted to replace their roof, so they said cash was tight. "I can cover the materials," I told them, "but then we put the arrangement in writing." Eric looked offended. "Dad, I'm not going to charge you rent." "Then you will have no problem signing a paper that says so." Joanne had taught me that family agreements need more writing, not less. Strangers expect contracts, families expect memory, and memory becomes very flexible when property values rise. We met with a local attorney named Hannah Cole. She drafted a real estate improvement and occupancy agreement between Mercer Custom Carpentry and Eric and Dana Mercer, the property owners. The agreement was simple. I would design and construct the apartment, contribute my labor without charge, and advance up to $48,000 for documented materials, permits, and direct project costs. In exchange, I would have exclusive rent-free occupancy for 60 months beginning on the date of final approval. I would pay my own utilities and carry renter's insurance, but no rent. If Eric and Dana demanded rent, removed me, transferred the apartment to someone else, or otherwise ended the arrangement before the 5 years expired, the occupancy exchange would terminate. Every documented dollar I had advanced for materials would become due within 30 days. The agreement included their names, mailing address, the property's legal description, and the scope of work. It said the construction obligation and the occupancy promise were connected parts of the same exchange. All three of us signed it before a notary. Dana joked that I trusted paper more than people. Paper does not change what people promise, I said. It records it. Work began in June. I spent the first month reinforcing the garage structure. The existing ceiling joists had been designed to hold storage, not a kitchen, bathroom, furniture, and a 64-year-old carpenter who liked cast iron pans. I installed engineered beams and new floor joists. I framed the stair opening, ran plumbing through a heated chase, and coordinated the electrical work with a licensed electrician I had known for 20 years. Eric helped on the first 3 Saturdays. Then his new job became busy. Dana chose fixtures. She selected matte black faucets, a white quartz counter, and cabinet pulls that cost 3 times what ordinary pulls cost because a designer online called them timeless. Those are outside my budget, I told her. But the apartment becomes part of our property, she said. I should have required her to pay the difference. Instead, I found the money elsewhere in the budget. I bought standard tile instead of handmade tile and built the vanity myself. That was one of my flaws. I was good at protecting a building from bad load calculations and terrible at protecting myself from small family pressures. Each concession felt harmless. Together, they taught Dana that the project would adjust around whatever she wanted. By November, the apartment had walls, heat, plumbing, and electricity. By January, the interior was finished. I built white oak cabinets, a walnut breakfast ledge, and a narrow bookcase that fit between 2 windows. I used a piece of reclaimed fir from my old workshop for the bedroom headboard. In one corner, I installed a small desk where Joanne's accounting cabinet used to stand. The material ledger reached exactly $48,000. I had receipts for every dollar. The town allowed temporary occupancy because the interior, utilities, fire separation, and emergency exits had passed inspection. The remaining contracted work was exterior, the permanent stair landing, covered entry, guardrail, final siding, and drainage below the steps. Montana winter had frozen the ground and buried the work area in snow. The inspector noted the unfinished items and scheduled final approval for summer. I moved in during January. For 6 months, the arrangement worked. Lily came upstairs after school and did homework at the walnut ledge. On Sundays, I cooked breakfast for everyone. I repaired a sticking door in Eric's house and built Dana 2 planter boxes from leftover cedar. I paid the apartment's electric use, internet, and insurance as promised. I did not use their groceries. I did not enter the main house without knocking. If Dana needed privacy, I gave it to her. In March, Eric had the property appraised for insurance purposes. The appraiser spent more time measuring the apartment than examining the roof. I asked Eric about it. "We're just updating the value after the improvement," he said. The property had been worth about $465,000 before construction. The appraisal came back at $615,000. My $48,000 in unpaid labor had added roughly $150,000 on paper. I was proud of that. I did not yet understand that Eric was looking at the increased equity as money waiting to be extracted. When the snow melted, I resumed the exterior work. I poured footings for the stair landing, built the covered entry, installed code-compliant rails, finished the siding, and graded the drainage away from the garage. Eric signed each weekly work log as owner. The final inspection passed on July 2nd. That date matters. In construction, facts often turn on dates: when materials arrived, when the last substantial work was performed, when payment became due, and when a notice was recorded. I had spent my whole career tracking those things for customers. I tracked them for my son, too. 5 days after final approval, Dana's parents arrived in a rented moving truck. Martin and Carolyn Hayes lived in Oregon. Martin had retired from regional sales, and Carolyn said they wanted to be near Lily. I knew they were considering Montana. I did not know they had already sold their condominium. They moved into Eric's guest room and filled half the garage with boxes. At dinner that evening, Dana announced that the house was becoming crowded. I assumed she wanted help organizing storage. "Mom and Dad need a more permanent space," she said. I looked at Eric. He studied his plate. "There is no permanent space," I said. "The guest room is the only extra bedroom." Dana folded her napkin. "The apartment is the obvious solution." "The apartment is occupied. For now." Carolyn murmured that they did not want to cause trouble. Martin said nothing. Eric finally looked at me. "We're not asking you to leave immediately." "What are you asking?" Dana answered. You can stay, but the arrangement has to reflect reality. Similar apartments rent for at least $1,600 a month. Mom and Dad sold their place and need stability. If you want to keep the apartment, you need to start paying rent. For a moment, I thought she was joking. I built that apartment on our property with my money. It improved our house, she said. That was your choice. It was an exchange, 5 years without rent. Dana leaned back. This is our house, Paul. You're just a tenant. Eric's eyes stayed on the table. I waited for him to correct her. He did not. Do you agree with this? I asked. Dad, circumstances changed. The agreement explains what happens when circumstances change. Dana's expression tightened. No one is going to enforce a family note over a garage apartment. I stood. Send the rent demand in writing. Why? Eric asked. Because if you are changing the arrangement, the date should be clear. The next morning, an email arrived from Dana. Beginning August 1st, rent for the apartment would be $1,600 per month plus utilities. If I did not accept, I was to vacate within 30 days so her parents could move in. Eric was copied. That email did something the dinner conversation had not. It turned disrespect into evidence. I printed it and drove to Hannah Cole's office. Hannah read the occupancy agreement, the email, my ledger, the signed work logs, and the final inspection approval. Did you perform the work through July 2nd? She asked. The permanent landing, guardrails, covered entry, siding, and drainage, all part of the original scope. Not a token repair? No. 3 weeks of substantial exterior work. Good. You contracted directly with the property owners. The agreement identifies the real estate and the final work is recent. We are still within the filing period. Can I actually claim a construction lien against my son's house? If the construction debt becomes due and remains unpaid, family relationship does not erase the contract, but we follow the agreement exactly, no shortcuts. That was what I wanted. I did not want a threat, I wanted a sequence. On July 9th, Mercer Custom Carpentry issued an itemized invoice to Eric and Dana for $48,000. The invoice referenced the early termination clause, attached the rent demand, and listed every material category: structural lumber, engineered beams, insulation, drywall, windows, plumbing components, electrical materials, cabinets, flooring, counters, fixtures, exterior stairs, guardrails, siding, permits, and inspection costs. Payment was due within 30 days, exactly as the contract required. Hannah sent the invoice by certified mail and email. Eric called that evening. You billed us $48,000? The agreement billed you. I documented the amount. You lived here free for 6 months? I was promised 60. So you think 6 months was worth 48 grand? No. I think ending the agreement early triggers reimbursement of the materials. That is what you signed. Dana says the paper won't hold up. Then you can ask your attorney. Are you really doing this to me? The question almost made me laugh. You sent me a rent demand for the room I paid to build. This is different. It feels different because you expected me to accept it. He lowered his voice. We have plans in motion. What plans? It doesn't matter. It mattered very much. I learned about the refinance from Lily by accident. She came upstairs one afternoon and asked whether she could choose a bedroom in the lake house. What lake house? I asked. The one Dad and Mom are buying to rent to vacation people. Eric had applied for a cash-out refinance against the increased value of his property. He intended to pull out enough equity for the down payment on a second house near a reservoir. The apartment I built had increased the appraisal. The refinance would convert that improvement into cash. Dana's parents would occupy my apartment, and Eric would use the equity created by my work to become a landlord somewhere else. The arrangement had not changed because the house was crowded. It had changed because my free apartment was now more valuable to them as housing for Dana's parents, and my construction was more valuable as collateral. I said nothing. The 30-day payment period expired on August 8th. No check arrived. Eric sent one email disputing the invoice. He did not identify a single incorrect receipt. Dana wrote that my labor had been a gift between family members, even though the invoice did not charge $1 for labor. On August 10th, Hannah prepared the lien statement. It identified the owners, the property, the improvement, the amount due, the contracting business, and the first and last dates of substantial work. I signed it under oath. The county clerk and recorder stamped it that afternoon. Construction lien, $48,000. Mercer Custom Carpentry against the improved real estate owned by Eric and Dana Mercer. I did not send Eric a triumphant photograph. I did not call the bank. I did not tell Lily. Hannah served the recorded notice in the ordinary way. Eric received it and left me a voicemail. This is insane. Remove it before you destroy everything. I saved the message and continued packing. The title company discovered the lien the following afternoon, one day before closing. The refinance could not proceed with an unresolved construction claim against the property. The lender wanted clear, insurable priority. The title officer required a recorded release, an agreed escrow payoff, a bond, or a court order resolving the lien. Eric had none of those things. He had expected to sign papers on Friday morning and receive cash soon afterward. Instead, his closing was suspended. The seller of the reservoir property had already granted him one extension. His earnest money deadline was Monday. That was when he called me on speaker and asked what I had done. After I told him I had sent a bill, he began shouting, "You knew about the refinance. Not when you demanded rent. You found out." "Yes. So you timed this to kill the closing." "I timed it to the contract and the filing deadline. Your closing happened to depend on a title you assumed would remain clean while my invoice remained unpaid." Dana's voice came from behind him. "Tell him he is never seeing Lily again. There are threats that frighten you and threats that reveal the person making them." Dana had reached for my granddaughter before asking whether the debt was real. "Do not use Lily as a collection defense," I said. Eric went quiet. "What do you want?" he asked. "The $48,000 in the agreement. We don't have that in cash. That's why we're refinancing." "Then your title company can arrange a payoff from closing proceeds. My attorney will provide the amount and release terms." "You'll take your own son's money at closing?" "It is my money at closing. You have been using it in your walls." He ended the call. On Monday, Eric and Dana met with their attorney. Their attorney called Hannah the same afternoon. He did not say the contract was meaningless. He did not say the lien was obviously invalid. He asked whether I would accept less in exchange for an immediate release. Hannah asked me what I wanted. 48,000, I said. You have received 6 months of occupancy. They may argue for an offset. The agreement does not provide one. Correct. I gave them my labor. I am not billing for that. I am not charging interest. I am not asking for the added property value. I want the material money the contract promised. And your housing? I looked around the apartment. The walnut ledge caught afternoon light. Joanne's old accounting cabinet sat beneath the window. Every joint was tight. Every wall was straight. But a room can stop being home before you leave it. "I am moving," I said. "They pay the reasonable moving cost because their termination is forcing it." Hannah proposed a settlement. The refinance could close through escrow. From the proceeds, the title company would pay Mercer Custom Carpentry $48,000 and pay the moving company directly. I would vacate within 21 days. Once the funds were confirmed, Hannah would record the lien release. The release would not be delivered early based on a promise. Eric rejected it. Then the reservoir seller refused another extension. Eric lost the opportunity to buy the second property. His earnest money was mostly refundable because the financing contingency had not been removed, but the inspection fee and appraisal fee were gone. More importantly, the deal he had described to friends as his first investment property disappeared. 2 days later, he accepted our terms. The new refinance closing was scheduled for the following week. The title company prepared the documents carefully. My lien appeared as a payoff item on the settlement statement. At 10:12 on Thursday morning, $48,000 was wired from escrow to my business account. At 10:19, the moving company confirmed payment. At 10:31, Hannah authorized release of the construction lien. Not before. The lender funded the remaining refinance. Eric received far less cash than he had expected because my reimbursement came off the top. There was no longer enough for another down payment. Dana's parents moved into the apartment the day after I moved out. They had expected a finished private home created at no cost to them. What they received was the space, but not my continued support. Martin called during their first week because a cabinet door was slightly out of alignment. "Paul, could you come adjust this?" Any competent carpenter can do it. Dana said you built it. I did. Wouldn't it take you 5 minutes? My business rate has a 2-hour minimum. He never called again. They paid their own utilities, insurance, furniture, maintenance, and household expenses. Eric and Dinah had wanted them nearby. Now, they financed that decision themselves. I rented a small one-bedroom apartment above a closed hardware store in downtown Copper Creek. It had uneven floors, old windows, and a view of the mountains between two brick buildings. The landlord charged me $1,200 a month. The first night I noticed the bedroom door rubbed against the frame. I laughed for the first time in weeks. The next morning I fixed it with the landlord's written permission. Eric did not speak to me for 2 months. Lily called from her mother's phone once, then communication stopped. I did not retaliate. I sent birthday cards and kept copies. Hannah reminded me that the construction dispute and access to my granddaughter were separate matters. I treated them separately, even when Dana did not. In November, Eric came to my apartment alone. He stood in the hallway and looked at the narrow room behind me. You really live here? That is usually what an apartment is for. The place over the garage is nicer. I know the carpenter. He almost smiled. Then he looked down. Dana thinks you humiliated us. The lien was recorded at the county office. I did not announce it at dinner. You knew the title company would find it. That is what a lien is for. You could have warned me about the closing. You could have warned me that you planned to charge rent and move Dana's parents into the apartment. Instead, you let her tell me at the table. He stepped inside. We sat at a second-hand kitchen table I had bought for $40. I did not think you would file, he said. I know. I thought the agreement was just to make you comfortable. A contract that matters only when everyone is comfortable is decoration. Dana said because the apartment became part of the house, you could not take it back. I never tried to take it back. I asked for the money your signed agreement required if you took back the occupancy. He rubbed his hands together. The refinance was supposed to change things for us. It did. You know what I mean. You were going to use the value created by my money to buy another property while charging me to remain in the first one. He did not deny it. I told myself it was temporary, he said. The rent demand did not say temporary. Dana's parents had nowhere else. They had the proceeds from selling their condominium. His head lifted. That was when I realized Dana had not told him everything. Martin and Carolyn had money from their sale. They were not homeless. They simply preferred to preserve their savings while I subsidized their housing. Eric looked as if another support had shifted under his house. They said most of it was tied up, he murmured. That is between you and them. He sat quietly. Can I bring Lily to see you? He finally asked. She never needed permission from me. The following Sunday, Lily came for pancakes. The apartment was small, so we ate at the kitchen table with our elbows nearly touching. She asked why I no longer lived above the garage. I did not tell a 10-year-old that her parents had traded a promise for equity. The agreement ended, I said, so I found my own place. Do you like it? I looked at the mountain view between the buildings. I like knowing what it costs. My relationship with Eric did not return to what it had been. Trust is not a cabinet hinge. You cannot tighten 2 screws and make the door sit perfectly again. But he began visiting. Sometimes he apologized. Sometimes he defended himself. I stopped accepting apologies that came packaged with explanations about Dana's pressure, the refinance, or changing circumstances. Your wife made the demand, I told him once. You made it binding by staying silent and signing the email. That was the part he had to own. The $48,000 remained in my business account for 6 months. I did not spend it immediately because recovering money and feeling secure are not the same thing. Eventually, I used part of it for a deposit on a small condominium at the edge of town. It had 1 bedroom, a heated workshop bay, and no stairs. Before closing, I read every document. The title was clean. I still drive past Eric's property sometimes. From the county road, I can see the apartment windows above the garage. At night, the light catches the white oak cabinets. The exterior stair landing sits level because I poured the footings below the frost line. The guardrails are straight. The roof over the entry sheds snow exactly where I designed it to. I am proud of the work. That may sound strange. The apartment became the center of the worst dispute my son and I ever had, but the wood did not betray me. The agreement did not betray me. The tools did not betray me. People did. And when they did, the records held. Some viewers might say, I should have forgiven the $48,000 because Eric is my son. Some might say I should never have spent the money in the first place. Both arguments contain part of the truth. I gave too much because grief made closeness look like security. I believed living near my family would guarantee that I belonged there. No contract can guarantee affection, but a contract can prevent affection from being used to erase a debt. I did not file the lien to take my son's home. I filed it to make the house acknowledge what was inside it, $48,000 of materials I had purchased under a written exchange. I gave Eric 30 days to pay. I followed the filing rules. I accepted payment through escrow, and the moment the money arrived, I released the lien. No extra punishment, no false amount, no attempt to claim the value of my free labor, only the number he had signed. Dana once called me just a tenant. She was wrong about the word just. A tenant can have a contract, a carpenter can have a lien, and a father can love his son without financing the people who tried to replace him.